So the Articles of Confederation were no good. Which brings us to the Constitution, the second attempt. We have a Constitutional Convention. The Constitutional Convention, we have 55 guys meet together in Philadelphia, and their goal, the goal of the Constitutional Convention, the name of their meeting, is to revise the Articles of Confederation, to make them better. The Constitutional Convention has a number of the founding fathers in it, the famous group, including the Big Four. Now the convention is led by your friend and mine, the father of his country, Mr. George Washington. If you're going to pick a man to father your country, you can't do much better than George Washington.
Beauty president, eh?
Oh yeah. George Washington will be the president of the convention. He will be the leader of the meeting. We'll also have James Madison present. So we got Washington. He's our leader. We got Madison. We got Madison's kind of opponent, Alexander Hamilton. And then I think we all know the oldest guy who was there. That's Ben Franklin. So those are our big four. Hey, Mr. Clark?
That's right. And one prominent name that was not there, at least at the signing, when the Constitution was ratified, was Thomas Jefferson. He actually never signed the Constitution. He was away on envoy to la France.
That's right.
Yeah. So we've got the Constitutional Convention. The idea being that they liked the idea that they were in charge of their government. But they recognized that the articles were just too weak. So they were going to, the idea, as Mr. Jones said, Indiana Jones, the idea was that they were going to go revise them, make some adjustments. But when they got there, they realized there were just too many issues, too many differences that separated different groups within the nation. So I'm going to move Big George into the president. Okay, so let's take a look at what we've got here. Constitutional issues. First of all, you got the small states versus the large states.
So that'd be your states like Rhode Island and New Jersey, and then your large states would be like Virginia, Pennsylvania.
And they were competing against each other over, specifically, the idea of representation. The small states were afraid that the large states were going to bully them, push them around. So that's one issue that's going to have to be resolved. Another issue here is a group, and we haven't talked about these two groups yet, the Federalists versus the Anti-Federalists. Now, federal government, you can probably figure out what a Federalist is and what an Anti-Federalist is. The Federalists are going to be the group that wants a stronger federal government. The Anti-Federalist is the group that is still very much afraid, based on what happened with Britain, that the federal government is going to be too big, too intrusive, and too powerful. So these two groups are going to have to come together and work this out. Now, your prominent Federalists would be Alexander Hamilton, George Washington. Your prominent Anti-Federalists, the poster child for Anti-Federalism will be Thomas Jefferson.
And James Madison will be in there too, eh?
James Madison. Beauty. Now, what to do about the masses? Now, first of all, who are the masses? It's your general, average American that really doesn't have a large amount of education. And the question will be, how much power will the masses have with respect to electing the president? I don't believe, in Indiana, maybe you can help me out with this, but I don't believe that there was a huge problem in terms of representation at the local level. In other words, people that were the framers of the country didn't really worry about what the masses wanted to do at local governmental levels. But they were greatly concerned with the masses, the uneducated, controlling the federal government at exactly that, at that level, the federal government level. So they had to figure out what they were going to do there. And the primary concern was what to do with the President of the United States. Who was going to elect him? How was he going to be elected? And you basically got, once again, not to oversimplify it, but two basic groups. One that thinks every American should have a say with regard to electing the president and the federal government at that level. And then you've got the other group which says, look, you can't put this much control into the hands of people who really don't understand the mechanics and even the subtleties of the American system.
Right, you got these, including the big four, there are 55 guys total at the Constitutional Convention, and they're all rich old white guys. Most of the country is not rich old white guys. Most of the country is poor, small, uneducated farmers, as Mr. Clark said. So they have to decide, do they trust these people to pick the leader of the country? It's a big decision.
Very big. And then, of course, you've got the huge divisions between the North and the South. And it's slavery is one of the more focal points in that it's highly concentrated on the regions. But don't forget that slavery is part of a bigger economic system in the South. It's part of the social system and the political system as well. And the North, in large part, is opposed to the Southern system. Not necessarily against slavery, not necessarily. Some will be, some won't be. But the huge divisions over taxation, over the duties, how much money the South is making, who they're making it with, those are all going to be issues. And I had this down, we have this down here twice, because there'll be two compromises specifically geared toward that. So the issue here is, can the framers of the country save, can the framers of this country save the government? Because there are a lot of issues that need to be taken care of.
Right. So we got to make everybody happy here. We got to have a series of compromises. And the biggest compromise is the Great Compromise, which is why we call it the Great Compromise. It's also the most complicated, because it's the biggest. This solves this dispute that the guru was talking about with the small states and the large states. The small states are basically saying, in the Congress that's going to be created in this new government, the Constitution is going to have a Congress, a legislative body, kind of like the British Parliament, a little different. The small states are saying, according to the New Jersey plan, Jersey is a small state,
New Jersey.
the small states should have an equal representation to the large states. Everybody should get one vote. New Jersey should get one vote, Virginia should get one vote, Pennsylvania should get one vote. Every state will have one vote in the new Congress. Virginia, though, has other plans, right, Guru?
It's a huge state, especially when compared to New Jersey. So their thinking is, look, we're bigger, we're stronger, it's only right that we have more power. And look, their other thing they're saying is you could have a big, strong state too. It's not our problem. You just have to set up your system so that other people will want to go to your state. You'll have more people there. You'll have the same kind of representative power that we have, speaking from the perspective of Virginia. So you've got two oppositional forces. Who wins? Well, fortunately, Connecticut steps up and says, you know what, there's a way to do this. And that is to create a bicameral representative system. Bicameral.
That means two houses, eh?
Beauty. A bicameral Congress. And in one house, one part of the bicameral Congress, you will have the House of Representatives. We're not a real estate, so I'm going to abbreviate there. House of Representatives. In the House of Representatives, it will be based on population. So, the more people you have in a state, the more power you're going to have. So, the House of Representatives favors, you can see that there, Virginia.
So the guru is saying here, in the House of Representatives, Virginia is going to have more representatives than New Jersey because Virginia has a bigger population. So Virginia has more representatives there, they get more votes there, they have more power there. But it balances out with the second house.
Because in the Senate, everybody's going to be equal. And if you're going to pass a law, it's got to get through both of these. So Connecticut very ingeniously said, you know what we'll do? We'll create a bicameral system where you have to have both parts pass whatever it is you want to pass, in which case there really probably will be a need for it. If you can get the small states and the large states to agree on it, it's probably something that needs to occur. So in the Senate, everybody is equal with two. And that, here we go, it's like a football playbook here, that's going to take care of New Jersey. So New Jersey's happy, Virginia's happy, Connecticut's happy. That's our first and major compromise. Anything else, Indiana, you want to put on that?
We call it the Great Compromise because it saved the convention. If New Jersey didn't get the Senate, they would not have signed on to this whole Constitution. And if Virginia didn't get the House of Representatives, they would not have signed on to this whole Constitution. So it was a huge, great compromise to save the convention.
Our second one, the Federalists versus the Anti-Federalists. We've already discussed the two polarized groups. One believes in a much stronger federal government, and the other one believes in a weaker federal government. How are they going to pass that off? How are they going to agree? Well, Mr. Jones and I are going to do an entire segment on the Bill of Rights here in just a few seconds. Well, probably a few minutes. But they are going to agree on something called the Bill of Rights. Now, it's important to keep this in mind, too. The Bill of Rights are the first 10 amendments to the Constitution, and they only protect the people of the country against the abuses or potential abuses of the federal government. It does not protect against states or counties or any such thing. Only the federal government. The 14th Amendment will address that later on, and we will talk about that in the future. The Bill of Rights satisfies both of these, but the Bill of Rights, was it Indiana 1791? Bill of Rights was put in? And the Constitution ratified in 1788, so you can see there's a little gap there. What they agreed in principle at the Constitutional Convention had to be ironed out, and they will come in 1791. What to do about the masses? The Electoral College. The Electoral College, and this is something that it's easy to get confused on. We're going to try to boil it down here and make it pretty simple. But the Electoral College gives everybody, well, with some what's the word I'm looking for? There are going to be some variations, and I say everybody. That's obviously not true. Not everybody can vote, and we'll talk more about that in a little bit. But the idea was that if you were, at the time, white male property owner, then you would be able to vote in any state. I believe that's correct. And in some states, any male could vote with some age restrictions on that as well. The idea being that you, the people in general, would elect the President of the United States. But there was a little twist on that. The compromise comes in where some people said, look, we can't trust the average American to do this. So they had what are called electors. And the Constitution does not specify that the electors must vote in accordance with the will of the people. What does that mean? The majority of the people can vote for a president, but the electors can vote for who they want. Some of the knocks on the Electoral College, of course, would be that the winner of the popular vote might not win the Electoral College. It takes 270 votes, as we stand now, to elect the President of the United States. And that has happened a couple times. We've also had some interesting times where there have been ties in the Electoral College, and then it goes up to the Senate to cast the deciding vote.
So the key point here is that it's a compromise so that the average people don't directly elect the president. The electors in the Electoral College are selected by the average people. It's a little safety valve on the system. The Electoral College has never overruled the masses, but that safety valve was there in case the masses elected somebody crazy to be president.
So, as Mr. Jones said, you're not, or we are not, directly electing the President of the United States. At this time, we directly elect people into the House of Representatives, and we directly elect people into the Senate. We do not directly elect, or elect at all, the federal judiciary, and we do not directly elect the President of the United States. Anything else on the Electoral College?
I think we're good.
Good. North versus South. Huge, huge problems. It almost, with the time constraints of a video, it's almost kind of foolish to even begin to get into it because the differences are so large. We're going to try. Economic, social, political. What do we mean by that? Well, truly, the economic system of the North is much, much different than the economic system of the South. And thereby, in their being, the social differences are huge too. The social system of the South is almost based on a hierarchical ordering where rich white men have the power. And it's almost like they have a following of the masses, which of course leads into a political system which obviously it does not favor the average Southern citizen. The North, South, huge differences. So how are they going to satisfy the differences here? Well, a couple of compromises. Let's talk about the 3/5. Indiana, want to take a little bit?
Oh, absolutely. I love fractions. So this is the way with the 3/5 compromise. Virginia, in the House of Representatives, based on population, is going to get a certain number of representatives. Let's say their population is 500,000 people live in Virginia, and so as a result, they're going to get 10 representatives. But New Jersey says, whoa, New Jersey's in the north. New Jersey says, put on the brakes here. You don't get that many representatives because your population isn't really 500,000. You can't count slaves in your population.
You can't count them.
Hey, you're not giving them any rights, you can't count them. So the compromise is Virginia wants to count their slaves as part of their population. The North says, no, you can't do that. So the compromise is each slave counts as 3/5 of a person.
See, what the South wants is to make more money. So they don't want them to be counted for taxation because then they can keep more of the money. But they do want them to be counted for population because then that gives them more power in Congress, which then allows them to make laws more favorable to their system. The North, of course, is objecting to that greatly. How's that?
I think we're good.
Good. Once again, North versus South, the same things. The Commerce Compromise. Commerce referring to economics and business. So what's the deal with this? Well, the North was questioning the issues of slavery. The South was saying that it's not going away. And actually, to a point, to make a quick point here, the South was saying that given the demographics, slavery looked like it was on its way out looked like it was on its way out, was becoming obsoleted, if not antiquated. So it looked like slavery was going to end, and that's what the South was saying. Given another several years, and we might not even have this anyway. Other Southerners were saying slavery is here to stay, quote unquote. It's not going anywhere. So it depends on the Southern perspective of which you're viewing here. Nonetheless, it's still an issue. So they compromised. Slavery would be protected for 20 years. The idea from the North's perspective was that would give the South enough time to come up with a different economic system, because they did recognize that you can't just take an entire economic system away from a region. It'll unemploy the people and you'll have chaos. So the North recognized that. The South was somewhat giving, and they compromised on 20 years. That was the original. Of course, Eli Whitney and the cotton gin will change all that. The problem with this, and this is why a lot of people suggest, and I believe rightly so, that the Constitution is a cause of the Civil War, because it did not, in a finite manner, address the issue of slavery. It doesn't say that 20 years from now the slavery must be gone. It must be removed as a system of economic and political and social means. It doesn't say that. It says it's protected for 20 years. It doesn't say what happens in 25 or 40 or thereafter. The other part of the Commerce Compromise is that the South would not have to pay any duties, for that matter, no one would, for exporting goods. You have to pay taxes on imported goods, but not when you send them out to other countries. Those are called exports.
That's great. So you make a great point that the Constitution really sets us up for a future conflict for the North versus the South, because the slavery question is not firmly answered. But they come to enough of a compromise that they can create a form of government. And they make these other huge compromises, the Great Compromise on representation, the Bill of Rights, which satisfies the Anti-Federalists, and the Electoral College, which satisfies those who are afraid of the masses picking their president. And these compromises make it possible to create this remarkable government, the Constitution, which at the time was unlike any other government on earth. A totally remarkable government, and a government that probably would surprise its own creators that it's still here in the year 2013 as our government.
And how many other revolutions did America inspire? Because other countries saw what we did and said, we want to do the same. And when we head back to the Constitution, it is, in regarding to slavery, it almost shows the priorities of the framers. They really wanted to get this thing done, and that became more of an issue than even slavery. It's a matter of prioritization.
Indeed.
Okay, beauty job, eh?